Throughout the history of the video game industry, there have been several technological paradigm shifts. For example, in the earliest days, video game consoles would ship with all the games built into the machine, Pong clones as they were called, with several different variations of tennis games built into a device where you would use a dial to select which game you wanted to play. The industry would go on to experience several more of these shifts, such as the adoption of handheld gaming in the early 90s and high-definition gaming in the early 2000s. One such shift occurred in the mid-90s. And that was the adoption of the compact disc, or CD, as the preferred medium for most video game consoles moving forward. Some systems would continue to use cartridges, but for the most part, when compared to cartridges, the compact disc allowed video game developers to include large amounts of data at very inexpensive costs. It also allowed them to include new technology, such as Redbook CD audio and speech into games, which up until now had been very prohibitive on cartridge-based medium. Today, we'll be taking a look at one of the pioneers of the compact disc as a media format used for video gaming. We'll be taking a look at a powerful add-on for the Sega Genesis as we count down the top 25 most valuable Sega CD games. What's up, Internet? I'm Technohead, and welcome back to my channel, RetroTech. This is the next episode in Pixels to Polygons, a series where we take a look at the prices of classic video games from systems in the early 90s through to the early 2000s. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one of my absolute favorite systems, a system that I had as a kid, a system that I collect for today, and one that is very near and dear to my heart. The Sega CD. The Sega CD was an add-on for the Sega Genesis that was released in North America in 1992, about 3 years after the Genesis originally released. The Sega CD added several features to the Genesis, including CD-quality audio, some sprite scaling and rotation, and some more powerful graphic handling abilities. Working in tandem with the Genesis, it allowed for some unique experiences which were unavailable until that time. Some of the gameplay footage for today's video was captured on my actual childhood Sega CD system, a system that I've recently refurbished by replacing the capacitors and adjusting the laser. Still working even after 30 years. It's pretty amazing. You can see it here in the Tower of Power configuration with my Sega 32X plugged in as well. Now, in the last few videos, I received a few comments which led me to believe that I'm not doing a good enough job explaining the methodology in this video. I had been sort of skipping over that because I wanted to get right into the meat and potatoes of the values, but today I'm going to take a little more time to really go into what we're trying to do with these videos so that everyone will understand where the prices come from and why we're organizing the list in the way that we are. So buckle in. If you don't want to watch this, you can always use the chapters to skip ahead to the price lists and move on from there. So let's break down exactly what I'm trying to do. I want to take a look at the values of classic video games and how they've changed over the last 20 years. In previous videos for older systems, I used a book called Collecting Classic Video Games, which had a price list from 2002. Unfortunately, that book only included systems up until the Atari 7800, so I had to find another place that would have historical game values that I could use to compare against values of today. My main goal was that I want to compare apples to apples. I don't want to do something like compare price charting values today to a historic price guide that I find somewhere that might be incomplete. I really wanted to find a source that had prices from 2004 and compare it to today in 2024. And that's when the idea struck me. There's a local video game store here in Los Angeles called Game Dude. They've been in business for nearly 30 years, and I've been shopping there for as long as I can remember for classic video games. Now, the unique thing about Game Dude is that they publish a price list so you'll know how much you'd pay for a collectible game when you go into the store, and these price lists have been online since the early 2000s. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to compare apples to apples. I used the Wayback Machine to look at the prices for Game Dude games back in 2004, and then I'm using their current website to see what they're currently charging for these games today. I've had some people comment that a better place to get prices for today would be somewhere like eBay or price charting or Yahoo Japan or something like that. And while I agree that some of the prices on Game Dude's price lists today are a little out of date, probably because they don't have the inventory for some of these items and they don't bother to update the game prices unless they have the games in stock. But the reason that I'm using Game Dude today is that I wanted to compare a similar source to a similar source. And so because I'm using Game Dude's prices back in 2004, it makes sense to me to use the same price list from their store for today, because the methodology behind why they're choosing the prices they are is going to remain the same. Game Dude is a great store, but it's not a charity. They're going to charge as much as they can for these games. And for that reason, I feel that their modern price lists are about as accurate as me cherry-picking prices off of eBay would be. So that's where the prices come from, but what happens next? Well, I'll take the prices from 2004 and adjust them for inflation. Then I'll compare those adjusted prices to the prices today in 2024, and I'll see which of the games have had the largest increase or decrease in value. Now sometimes, like in the case of the Nintendo Entertainment System list, this works out so that the games that are generally accepted to be the most valuable, such as Little Samson or Flintstones or something like that, still ends up on the top of the list because it was expensive back then, but it still had the largest increase in value since. In some other cases, we've run into some weird situations where games that would typically be seen as the most valuable actually don't end up on the list because they were so expensive back in the day that their value increase is actually smaller than it would be for some games that had a smaller total value but a larger rise in value over time. So that means that these lists are not actually looking at which games are the most valuable today specifically, but instead we're taking a look at which games would have been the best investment. Or, as they would say in financial terms, which games were a compounder or a multi-bagger, meaning they had a very large increase on investment over time. To avoid any confusion, moving forward, when I take a look at these lists, I'm going to first sort them by the current most expensive games, and then I'm going to organize them by their percentage change, so that what we'll end up with will be a list of what is actually the most expensive current games, but they'll be ordered such that the ones that had the biggest increase in value will appear towards the top, and the ones with less of an increase in value will appear towards the bottom, even if when you look at their raw prices, one might be more expensive than the other. I'm not sure if that's going to create more or less confusion. I'm just trying to explain to you what my own thinking methodology is. As a collector, I'm more interested in the value increase over time for games that I'm holding on to, rather than thinking about what the games are currently priced at for games that I already own. In addition to this, I've also included rarities from rarityguide.com, so we can have some idea of whether or not rarity plays a role in the value of a certain game. But that's enough chit chat for now. Let's get into the list. Whatever you want to call it, let's count down the top 25 compounders, legacy pieces, grails, and multi-baggers for the Sega CD. We kick off the list with a true classic, Lunar the Silver Star. This is one of the games that I had as a kid with my brothers when we had a Sega CD. It's a classic overhead JRPG game, has fantastic cutscenes, and this is where the CD quality audio really comes into play because there was dialogue, and that was a big deal at the time. This game was $65 in 2004. Today it's going for $199. That's a 206% increase in value. Then we've got a fun title. This is Time Gal coming in at number 24. It's a rarity of 86, making it a relatively rare game, one of the cardboard box games. This game basically has gameplay like Dragon's Lair or something like that, but it's got a cute anime girl going through time and fighting dinosaurs and stuff. This game was a $40 game back in 2004, and today the price has gone up a bit. It's $129 today, which is a 223% increase in value. Then we have a classic PC game here. This is Heart of the Alien, which is the sequel to Out of This World, which is a game that appeared on Genesis as well. This game was a $40 game back in 2004, and it is relatively rare at an 82. Today this game is going for $129 at a Game Dude, and that's a 223% increase in value for Heart of the Alien. At number 22, we've got a true classic, Shining Force CD, which is the Sega CD release of the Shining Force series. It's a sequel to the original games featuring some of the children of the characters from the Shining Force games that appeared on the Sega Genesis. This is a very rare game at a 97, and it was going for $99 back in 2004. Today it commands a high price of $349, which is a 253% increase in value. Then we've got the sequel to a game we already saw on the list. This is the second Lunar game, Lunar Eternal Blue, slightly more rare than the original game. This game was also going for $99 back in the day. It's another JRPG style game. This game is going for $349 today. That's a 253% increase in value for another fantastic game on the Sega CD with great graphics and sound. Then we have one of the first F&V games. This is the style of game that was very popular on these multimedia devices. This is basically kind of a video that you have an overlay where you're shooting at criminals and stuff. This is Crime Patrol at number 20. Crime Patrol was going for $40 back in the day, and today that price has gone up considerably to $149. That's a 273% increase in value for Crime Patrol. At number 19, we're looking at another Working Designs game here. This is Vi, or Vey. I'm not sure how exactly to pronounce that. This game is kind of in the middle for rarity. It's a 65 on Rarity Guide, and it is another overhead JRPG style game with combat similar to Dragon's Quest or something like that. This game was going for $40 back in 2004, and it's gone up a little bit to $179 today, which is a 348% increase in value. Then we have a side-scrolling licensed game based on a movie. These games were huge in the 90s. This is Demolition Man, not a very rare game at a 54. Demolition Man was going for $32 back in 2004. Today, if you wanted to pick up a copy, you would have to spend $149, which is a 366% increase in value for Demolition Man. At number 17, we see The Space Adventurer featuring the anime character Cobra. This is a very rare game at a 93, and back in the day it was going for $82. This is a game similar to Snatcher. It's a visual novel based on the anime Cobra. Today, if you wanted to pick up a copy, you'd have to spend $449 at Game Dude, which is a 448% increase in value for this very rare title. Then we have another FMV style game similar to Time Gal. This is Road Avenger, a game which overlays gameplay over some sort of anime racing graphics. This game was not especially rare at a 53, and it was only going for $25 back in the day. That price has gone up a bit though. It's $149 today, which is a 496% increase in value for Road Avenger. That's followed by Lords of Thunder at number 15, the most metal game on the Sega CD. This is a very rare game at a 94, but it is a very good game. This game was going for $49 back in 2004. It's a title that also appears on the TurboGrafx CD. This game for the Sega CD is going for $349 today, which is a 602% increase in value for this shooter game. That's followed up by Flink, which is a European action platformer game. This is kind of rare. It's a 73 on the Rarity Guide for Flink. It has very good animation and kind of muted pastel graphics. It's going for $25 20 years ago, which is not too bad. Today that's gone up to $179, which is a 616% increase in value for Flink. My favorite game on the Sega CD comes in at number 13. This is Popful Mail, another Working Designs classic. Popful Mail is a fun action-adventure platformer game featuring a sassy redhead, her dragon buddy, and a wizard going out to have adventures and get cash. This is an $82 game for a very rare title back in the day, which is today going for about $599, a 630% increase in value. After that, we see a pretty good basketball game. I know in the Neo Geo list, I accidentally called a basketball game a baseball game, so I won't do that again here. This is a basketball game, and it is fun. This is ESPN NBA Hangtime 95, which is not especially rare. It was only going for $23 back in 2004, but that price has gone up a lot. Today, if you wanted a copy of NBA Hangtime, you'd have to spend $179, which is a 678% increase in value for this sports title. Then we have, without a doubt, one of the biggest heavy hitters on the Sega CD. This is Snatcher, one of Hideo Kojima's pre-Metal Gear Solid games. This game is very rare on the Sega CD, at least in the United States. It's a 96 on Rarity Guide. It was going for $99 20 years ago, and that's gone up considerably. It's going for $903 today at Game Dude, which is an 812% increase in value for this excellent visual novel. Then we've got Earthworm Jim Special Edition. This is a game that came out on lots of game platforms in the 90s, and it's a fun, very well animated platform featuring an earthworm wearing a spacesuit. This game was going for $32 back in the day, and that price has gone up considerably to $299 today, which is an 834% increase in value. This game is especially rare and at 83, so if you see a copy, make sure to pick one up. Then we've got a port of the Neo Geo fighting game Fatal Fury. This is Fatal Fury Special here. This is a very rare game for the Sega CD at an 86. However, back in 2004, it was only going for $23 despite its rarity. That has gone up a lot, as today it goes for $219, which is an 852% increase in value for Fatal Fury Special. We've got another rare one here. This is Android Assault, a 66 on the Rarity Guide. This is one of those games that you're always looking for when you go out to swap meets and stuff like that. Android Assault was not a very expensive game back in the day, going for only $17. But today, if you wanted to pick up a copy, you'd have to spend $169, and that's an 894% increase in value for Android Assault. Another classic shooter on the list here. This is Robo Aleste. Robo Aleste is a rarity of 78, making it a relatively rare game for the system. Back in 2004, this game was going for $23, but today that's gone up quite a bit to $229, which is an 896% increase in value for this very sought-after shooter on the Sega CD. Next up at number 6, we have Sonic the Hedgehog to blame for this one. This is Radical Rex, the story of a radical skateboarding Tyrannosaurus Rex who's having adventures. This game was a $32 game 20 years ago, and that was a good deal because today Radical Rex is going for $449. That's a 1,303% increase in value for this sort of middling platformer. Next up, we have a game that's a combination of two games, actually. We're looking at the prices for Three Ninjas Kickback and Hook. The gameplay is just going to be Three Ninjas Kickback, but this CD actually had both games on it. Now, this joint CD was only going for $8 back in the day, not too much. Neither of these games are very good, in my opinion. But today, in 2024, a copy would cost you $139, which is a 1,638% increase in value. Then we have another licensed movie game side-scroller. It's the 90s after all. This isn't especially rare. It has a rarity of 55. This is the Terminator at number 4. Back in 2004, you could easily pick up a copy of Terminator for $8, but that's gone up a lot, as today, in 2024, a copy of Terminator is going to cost you $149 at Game Dude, which is a 1,763% increase in value. Then we have the ultra-rare Wolfchild. This is a game, it's a action platformer game, sort of like, I guess, maybe Contra meets Altered Beast. You can turn into a werewolf and fight people. This game was only going for $8 back in the day, but that's gone up considerably. It's $179 for a copy today, which is a 2,138% increase in value for Wolfchild. Then we have a really interesting game at number 2. This is Soulstar, not an especially rare game, but it has a really unique perspective. It's a space shooter game that has kind of pseudo 3D kind of sprite scaling that it uses as part of its graphics, and it actually makes for a pretty interesting looking game. This game was $8 back in the day, and today it's going for $179, which is a 2,138% increase in value for Soulstar. And that brings us to our final game. What will it be? Which will be the last and number 1 game? Not a real surprise, it's Keio Flying Squadron, which is one of the rarest games for the Sega CD and consistently makes top of the list for most expensive game. This is a fun, cute-em-up sort of shooter game, similar to Cotton. You're a girl who's riding around in a dragon, fighting cats and raccoons and stuff. It's a $99 game back in the day, but today it's going for $2,268, which is a 2,191% increase in value. And there it was, the top 25 legacy pieces. In other words, the games that increased in value the most over the last 20 years for the Sega CD system. What did you think? Was there anything on this list that surprised you? Or was there anything that should have been on the list that wasn't? Please let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to know what you think. We'll be back next week with another juggernaut in CD-based multimedia gameplay as we take a look at the 3DO. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure that you click the subscribe button and press the bell icon so you'll be notified as soon as that video drops next week and you can drink in all that FMV goodness. And while you're clicking around, you might as well click the like button too, because it really helps out the channel and I truly appreciate it. And another quick housekeeping note, I got a few comments on my Super Nintendo video I released a couple of weeks ago that there were some glaring omissions, including Mega Man X3 and the Pocky and Rocky games, and I have to admit, that was just an error on my part. The spreadsheet that I used to make these videos, I had just sorted inaccurately, and I did miss a couple of games that should have been on the list, and I apologize for that, and I'm going to go back and make another Super Nintendo video later on in the series to correct some of that stuff. So thanks so much for pointing that out. I really appreciate you watching and keeping me honest on that one. I have fun making these videos, but I definitely also want them to be accurate, so I do appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Thanks for taking a look with me at some of the great games for one of my favorite systems, the Sega CD. That's all I have for this week, and we'll see you next time. Until then, this is Technohead signing off.
We have guidance internal. 10, 9, 8, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running, commit. Liftoff. We are so sorry. 11:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Keep Conrad reports that your program is in.